At 62, I'm supposed to be enjoying the view of the Atlantic from our estate. Instead, I'm watching my husband, Arthur, hand his mistress a folder worth $15 million in forged debts. "She's our ticket out," he hissed, thinking I was lost in a senile fog. "They treat me like a ghost, but I'm the one pulling the strings from the shadows." When Chloe cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes cold with greed, I realized the charade was over. Stay tuned to hear how I reclaimed my life, and please subscribe for more. She's staring at the Atlantic again. Fogs moved into the brain for the night. Arthur's voice is a rasp of old leather and contempt, and it travels across the study like a thing with weight. He doesn't lower it. He never does anymore. Why would he? I am furniture. I am the Eames chair I'm sitting in, cream-colored, expensive, and entirely mute. I stare through the floor-to-ceiling glass at the black water below. The Atlantic doesn't care about the Hargrove Estate's floor plan, about the 4,000 square feet of imported marble, about the way the moonlight hits the saltwater in silver fractures that could almost be beautiful. The waves come in and go out with the rhythmic indifference of a machine doing its only job. I find that comforting. I find a great many things comforting that Arthur believes are simply more evidence of my deterioration. Behind me, Chloe's scrubs swish with each step, a synthetic whisper against the Persian rug. She smells of antiseptic and vanilla, a combination that should be incongruous but has become, over these past months, the smell of captivity. She sets something on the side table to my right. Glass against glass. A pill bottle, I know without looking, though I will stare at the window for another 3 minutes before I allow my gaze to drift. They talk over me. The afternoon nurse filed another incident report, Chloe says. Her voice has that particular pitch she uses for Arthur, lower than when she speaks to me, professional, almost clinical. The voice of a woman who has studied what competence sounds like and learned to imitate it flawlessly. She wandered into the garage again. Just stood there with her hand on the hood of the BMW. Arthur grunts. A page turns. Gold cufflink clicks against mahogany. And the appointment with Hargrove's man is confirmed for Thursday? Dr. Renfield. Yes. I've already prepared the behavioral log. My hands are folded in my lap, buried in the loose folds of my cream knit cardigan. They are utterly still. My pulse is a different matter, it moves at the base of my throat in a jagged, arrhythmic stutter that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the effort of stillness. Stillness, the real kind, is not passive. It is work. It is the work of keeping every muscle, every instinct, every screaming neuron from doing what it wants to do, which is to stand up straight, turn around, and let them see what is actually behind these eyes. Instead, I watch the waves. The wind comes off the water in gusts that rattle the heavy glass in its frame, a low, intermittent moan that fills the silences between Arthur's movements. He shifts in his chair. The leather protests. He reaches for something on the desk. My eyes, fixed on the horizon as instructed by 4 months of careful performance, do what they have been trained to do without appearing to do anything at all. They read reflections. The dark glass of the floor-to-ceiling window is not just a view of the ocean. At night, with the warm amber light of Arthur's desk lamp behind me and the black nothing of the Atlantic in front, it becomes a mirror. A convex, slightly distorted mirror that shows me everything in the room I am not supposed to be watching. And there it is. A manila folder. Sitting on his leather blotter, angled just slightly toward the lamp, the way you angle a document when you've been reviewing it and haven't quite finished. The logo in the upper left corner is small but I know it. Hastings and Stern. Corporate law firm out of Midtown. I know them because I once spent 6 weeks reviewing their building security architecture, back before the word architecture in my title referred to circuits instead of concrete. Their logo is a clean serif font in navy blue. Beneath it, in the reflection, I can read 3 words of bold typeface. My name. And power of attorney. The waves come in. Go out. My hands do not move. A liquidation plan. That is the only accurate term for what I am looking at. Not a medical document. Not a care directive. A liquidation plan with my name on it and my signature. I can see even from here that there is a signature page, at the bottom. The $15 million in my personal trust. The funds I negotiated, protected, and legally ring-fenced before I ever agreed to close my own firm and become the Mrs. Hargrove that Arthur needed for his Manhattan dinner circuit. My safety net. My architecture. The one structure in this entire gilded estate that was built for my survival and mine alone. It is a target. Arthur's phone chirps, the high, sharp tone of a priority brokerage alert, the kind that makes his jaw tighten no matter where he is or what he's doing. He mutters something I don't catch, scrapes his chair back from the desk, and the sliding glass door to the terrace groans open on its track. Salt air rushes in, cold and immediate, the smell of the real world briefly replacing the controlled interior atmosphere of expensive mahogany wax and Chloe's vanilla. The door rolls shut again. From the kitchen, the precise, delicate sound of a pill bottle set against marble. The nightly ritual, commencing on schedule. I move. The ghost walk took me 3 weeks to perfect. It is not a shuffle, not exactly. A true shuffle is noisy, and noise draws attention. It is a glide with reduced heel clearance, weight distributed forward, slippers kissing the Persian rug with a pressure so minimal that even the oldest, most articulate floorboards beneath the carpet have nothing to say. I used to walk like this in server rooms, years ago. The quiet is second nature. First steps to the desk. My cardigan sleeve falls over my hand as I reach for the folder cover. An old habit, no fingerprints, not on anything that belongs to someone else's operation. I flip the cover open. My signature stares back at me from the bottom of the final page. It is elegant. I will give whoever forged it that much, they studied me. The controlled backward slant of the E, the open loop of the second L, the way the final E doesn't so much end as taper into a clean, decisive hairline. It is almost better than my actual signature, which has grown slightly tremulous from the performance of tremulousness. Almost. But I designed secure document systems for 17 years. I know what a wet ink signature looks like when it's been scanned, manipulated, and reprinted on archival weight paper. I know the ghost of the original strokes. This signature was made by a computer and a very good printer, and the pressure gradient is wrong by approximately 12 degrees. My heart does not race. It hardens. The logic board hums. That is the only way I have ever known how to describe it, even to myself, even in the privacy of the one room in this house that belongs only to me. It is a sensation that begins behind the sternum and radiates outward through the chest and shoulders, a kind of crystalline, clarifying cold that replaces heat with precision. Rage is hot. Grief is hot. Fear runs hot. But the response to a genuine systems breach, the moment when you understand that something has gotten inside your architecture and is actively dismantling it from within, that runs cold. Arthur has bypassed my firewalls. The man who still uses his birthday as his PIN code. The man who once locked himself out of his own office building for 11 days because he couldn't remember which of 2 numbers came first in a 4-digit sequence. The man who, 32 years ago, told me he loved me in the atrium of a Boston hotel and meant it, or something close enough to it that the difference hadn't mattered yet. He has not done this alone. The filing, the legal coordination, the behavioral documentation Chloe mentioned, this is a construction project. Arthur provides the capital and the motive. Chloe is the on-site contractor. Hastings and Stern are the architects of record, building something in my name that I never commissioned. The audacity of it. I recover the folder. Angle it precisely back to where it sat. Retreat. The fading wife I have been performing for 4 months dies somewhere between the mahogany desk and the hallway shadow. I step over her without looking down. The architect is online. The sliding door groans again. Arthur, returning from the terrace, still half engaged with his call, one hand pressing the phone to his ear and the other reaching for his bourbon glass without breaking stride. He moves like a man who has never once considered that any room he walks into might contain something working against him. I need the kitchen. Not for the obvious reason, not for food, not even for the knives, which I have catalogued and decided against for reasons both practical and temperamental. I need the kitchen because the kitchen has the secondary staircase, and the secondary staircase has, at its base, a wall panel that has not been opened in approximately 9 years. I move into the hallway shadow, one shoulder grazing the cold wainscoting, my gaze adopting the 1,000-yard vacancy of a woman searching for a word she's lost. The cream knit cardigan floats around me like something spectral. I am very good at being a ghost. I have had a great deal of practice. The light from the kitchen archway is warm and steady ahead of me. I aim for it. Going somewhere, Elodie? She is fast. That was my first miscalculation, the only one I will permit myself tonight. I had catalogued Chloe's movements, her patterns, her timing, over the course of 17 weeks of careful observation. I knew she was stronger than she looked. I knew the soft features and the loose copper braid were deliberate packaging, the same way a security interface is designed to look approachable before you realize it's the only thing standing between you and a 300,000 square foot vault. What I had not fully accounted for was her anticipation. She wasn't in the kitchen. She was waiting in the shadow of the archway, watching the hallway, and she stepped into my path with the smooth certainty of someone who had already calculated my trajectory. She blocks the archway completely. She is petite, but she has positioned herself with a knowledge of physics, 1 foot forward, weight balanced, her slight frame filling the narrow space the way a properly installed door fills its frame. There is no casual path around her. The copper braid swings over her shoulder as she tilts her head. Her green eyes are wide, soft, mocking with an undertone so subtle that only someone who has been watching her as carefully as I've been watching her would catch it. Let me help you find your way back, sweetheart. She reaches for me. Her hand clamps onto my upper arm just below the shoulder, and it is not a caregiver's touch. I have received caregiver touches, during the 2 weeks, before Chloe arrived, when Arthur brought in an actual RN named Patricia who had 30 years of geriatric experience and hands that understood the difference between support and restraint. Patricia's hands had been warm, practiced, infinitely careful. Chloe's hand is a vice. Her fingers find the gap between muscle and bone with the efficiency of someone who has done this before, pressed into a specific anatomical point that generates disproportionate pain from minimal pressure. A control technique. The kind you learn in certain programs, or from certain people, and that has no legitimate place in the care of an elderly dementia patient. I let my arm go limp. This is the correct move. Not because I am afraid, I have catalogued my fear and shelved it in a place I won't need to access until this is over, but because resistance would confirm what she is testing for, the presence of a still functional will. I give her nothing. My arm hangs. My knees soften. I sway slightly toward the doorframe, and the wall takes some of my simulated weight. She leans in. Her breath is peppermint tea and something chemical beneath it, something clean and sharp that I recognize but can't immediately name. I file it for later. Careful, dear, she murmurs, and her voice has dropped below the range Arthur can hear from the study. The saccharine is gone from it. What's left is a flat, utilitarian quiet, the voice of someone completing a task. We can't have you wandering. We can't have you wandering, dear. You might fall. She pauses, and in the pause I hear it, the edge. The thing she almost doesn't say but then decides to say anyway because she believes I won't retain it. Or worse, remember something you shouldn't. There it is. She is not worried about my safety. She is worried about my data. She is worried that somewhere in the supposed ruins of my cognitive function, a shard of clarity might catch the light at the wrong moment and reflect something inconvenient back at Arthur, or at Hastings and Stern, or at Dr. Renfield, who is coming on Thursday with his behavioral log and his official evaluations. I hold my jaw slack. My eyes find a point approximately 3 inches behind her left ear and rest there with the vacant, soft-edged focus of a woman watching something that isn't there. A slight parting of the lips. A small, slow blink. "It's time for your medicine," she says then, and her voice has climbed back up to its performance register, bright, loud, professional. Arthur audible. "It'll make the scary thoughts go away." I think, nothing makes thoughts go away. That is not how the brain works. Sedatives suppress transmission. They do not erase data. The architect in me cannot help it, even now, even with her fingers grinding into my arm, the pedantry is there. "I think, you have made an error in your threat model, Chloe. You should have worried less about my wandering and more about my sitting still." She leads me like she owns me. I give her my weight, enough of it to be credible, not so much that she stumbles. I have measured her. She is 5'3", probably 125, and she carries most of her mass in her hips and thighs. Her upper body strength is good but not exceptional. She is managing me with technique, not with power, and technique has limits. The limit, specifically, is that it requires the subject's passive cooperation. I cooperate. Passively. She maneuvers me through the kitchen archway and toward the breakfast nook, one hand still on my arm, one hand hovering near my elbow in a gesture that from a distance would look maternal and from close-up feels like a landing gear, ready to deploy. I let my feet drag slightly against the tile, not enough to stumble, just enough to sell the reduced proprioception of a woman whose brain is no longer sending clean signals to her feet. I watch. I am always watching. The true vacancy is not in my eyes but in the expression that surrounds them, the slack jaw, the parted lips, the deliberate erosion of all the small muscular signals that, in a healthy face, communicate engagement. Strip those away and the eyes become windows into an empty house. She never looks at my eyes for long. Most people don't, once they believe the house is empty. Looking too long into vacant eyes is uncomfortable in a way that operates below conscious reasoning. She looks away. I measure the strength in her grip. I measure the length of her stride, 31 inches, slightly shorter than average for her height, which means she's been trained to move efficiently in confined spaces. I measure the time it takes her to glance at the kitchen counter versus the time it takes her eyes to travel back to me. I am an architect. I take measurements. That is what architects do. The breakfast nook chair receives me with a muffled grunt of wood against tile. Chloe releases my arm and steps back, already moving toward the counter and the silver tray she's prepared. The kitchen is bright, recessed LED lighting, warm spectrum for the patient comfort, protocol Arthur apparently installed, which I find precisely as offensive as intended. I stare at the surface of the table. And in the polished silver of the serving tray at the table's center, I find another mirror. The reflection is curved and imprecise, more impressionistic than readable, but I have been reading imprecise reflections since the first night of this performance. In the curved silver, behind me and to my right, the wall-mounted security keypad. The panel I installed in 2009, during the redesign of the estate's integrated system, positioned there because the breakfast nook was the first room Arthur entered every morning and the last room he left every night. I wanted the master panel where the master of the house would use it. The LED is red. Armed. Arthur has changed the master code. I knew this. What I needed was to confirm how he changed it. Whether he'd been clever about it for once in his 64 years, or whether the man who uses his birthday as his pin had simply found another number that meant something to him. He walks through the kitchen without stopping. Glances at the keypad. His hand rises automatically, muscle memory, and taps 4 keys. In the curved mirror of the silver tray, 5, 2, 8, 0. The altitude of Denver, Colorado. Where he has a secondary apartment he does not know I know about. Predictable. This house is mine. Not legally, not anymore, not with a forged power of attorney sitting on the mahogany desk in the next room. But it is mine in every other way that matters. I designed this security architecture in the months after we lost the pregnancy, when I couldn't sleep and needed something to do with my hands and my mind that was more useful than grief. I spent 11 weeks wiring, testing, integrating, and documenting every system in these 4,000 square feet. I know where every conduit runs. I know the load capacity of every circuit. I know the exact millisecond delay between a motion sensor trigger and the log entry it generates. I look up at the ceiling. The 360-degree camera in the crown molding is watching me. It is positioned at the corner where the kitchen meets the breakfast nook, covering both spaces in a single fisheye sweep. It is a Hargrove Security Model T7, installed in 2011, firmware version 3.2, and I know, because I wrote the integration spec myself, that the T7's behavioral tagging function requires a manual review threshold to be set. Someone has set mine. They have been logging my agitation events, the moments when I move unexpectedly, reach for something, display facial expressions inconsistent with the diagnosed profile. They are building a record. A behavioral record, to accompany Dr. Renfield's evaluation on Thursday, to accompany the forged power of attorney in the Hastings and Stern folder, to accompany whatever affidavit Chloe has been carefully not writing in plain sight. To escape this, I cannot break the system. I designed this system. I know its passwords and its failure modes and its hidden override channels. But a woman with advanced dementia who suddenly begins circumventing a sophisticated integrated security system is a woman whose dementia diagnosis becomes immediately complicated. The record of my circumvention becomes their exhibit. I must not break the system. I must rewrite its permissions. Chloe slides a small paper cup across the table. White. The size of a soufflé cup, the kind they use in hospitals and care facilities. Inside it, a single white tablet, oblong, unmarked on this side, which tells me it's a compounded preparation rather than a commercial pharmaceutical, which tells me Arthur has a doctor in his pocket, not just a lawyer. I pick up the cup with both hands, performing the fine motor tremor I've been developing for 6 weeks. My wrists shake. My fingers fumble. Chloe watches with the attentive patience of a woman who has done this many times and expects it to take as long as it takes. Arthur is in the kitchen doorway. Arms crossed over his bespoke navy suit, his salt and pepper hair catching the recessed light. He is watching me the way a man watches an investment he's been told will appreciate on a specific timeline, not with feeling, but with schedule. I lift the cup to my lips. The tablet goes under my tongue. The left side, back molar, tucked into the sulcus with the efficiency of a motion I have been practicing on breath mints for 3 weeks. The water glass is already in my other hand. I tip my head back, perform the exaggerated, full-body swallow of a woman who has been told to take her medication by someone she trusts, which includes the brief, childlike pause afterward and the small exhale that suggests the ordeal is complete. Arthur nods once. "Good girl, Elodie," he says. He says it the way he says everything to me now, slightly too loud, slightly too slow, with a patient, manufactured warmth that is indistinguishable from contempt if you know what you're listening for. He turns back to his liquid assets. The pill is dissolving against my cheek, bitter and chalky. I stare at the table surface, at the wood grain, at the reflection of the overhead light in the polished silver tray. I stare with all the blankness and absence of a woman whose world has narrowed to the 4 walls of this breakfast nook, whose thoughts move like slow water, whose story is almost over. In 12 years of security architecture, I designed 37 systems. I found the flaw in every single one of them, because that is what architects do before anyone else does it for them. The flaw is always the same: the system assumes the threat comes from outside. The system never adequately accounts for the threat that is already inside, that has been inside for months, that knows the layout, the codes, and the precise behavioral expectations of every sensor in the building. The bitter taste sharpens against my tongue. I press the tablet tighter against my molar. The countdown begins. The grandfather clock in the foyer counts the seconds like a patient creditor. 10 o'clock. 10:15. 10:30. Each tick carries through the walls of this house with a clarity that I have always found either comforting or threatening, depending on which version of my life I was living at the time. I lie on my back in the center of the king-sized bed and count the seconds between the ticks, the way I used to count clock cycles when I was debugging processing delays in a security mainframe at 2 in the morning. The ceiling above me is painted a warm ivory. I stare at it. I breathe. I wait with the specific patience of a woman who understands that patience is not a feeling but a structural component, a load-bearing wall in the architecture of any long-term operation. 30 minutes after the last floorboard groans beneath the weight of retreating footsteps, Chloe's, distinctive in their deliberate, measured quiet, I move. I lean over the side of the mattress and open my mouth. The tablet comes out on my tongue, softened at the edges, bitter beyond description, leaving behind it a ghost of chalky numbness that coats the left side of my mouth like a warning. I spit the half-dissolved mass into a folded square of silk tissue from my nightstand. The taste lingers, pharmaceutical and chemical and cold, and underneath both of those things, the unmistakable flavoring of someone's clinical contempt for who I am and what I might still be capable of. I fold the tissue twice and tuck it into the hollowed-out base of the decorative lamp on my nightstand, a cavity I created the second week of this performance, on a quiet Thursday afternoon when Arthur was in the city and Chloe was on the phone with someone she didn't want overheard. I have 7 prior tablets in there. A small archive of their intentions. I am awake. I am clear. And I am starving. I slide out of bed in a single controlled motion, the kind that makes no sound. My feet find the hardwood and register the cold of it as information rather than discomfort. The radiant heat has been dialed back in this wing. Arthur's doing, or Chloe's. Another small cruelty designed to deepen the impression of a woman whose body is failing her. I cross to the bedroom door in 6 steps and reach for the brass handle with my right hand. It doesn't move. Not the familiar resistance of a standard deadbolt, not the slight catch of an old latch misaligned in its frame from years of humidity and salt air. It doesn't move the way a door doesn't move when it has been sealed by something that has no physical key component, no cylinder, no knob, nothing to pick or turn. I look up. Recessed into the door frame, flush with the painted wood and almost invisible in the ambient darkness, is a slim panel of brushed steel approximately 4 inches long. Its status light glows blue. Steady. Unblinking. An IoT deadbolt. One of the Meridian series, if I'm reading the profile correctly, tethered to a smartphone hub, remotely operable, with no local override mechanism that doesn't require the paired device. Arthur's iPhone. The breath I draw in is slow and controlled, in through the nose, held for a count of 3, out through the mouth. The sensation in my solar plexus is not quite physical pain and not quite emotional response. It is the specific, nauseating jolt of realizing that something you designed, a space you planned and built and poured your intelligence into, has been turned against you with such thoroughness and such deliberateness that the person who did it must have spent real time thinking about how you think. He put the lock on the inside of the frame. Not the outside. He thought about which side to put it on. I am not simply a prisoner. I am a prisoner in a cell that was built specifically for me, by someone who studied the architecture of my mind. The Atlantic moans against the estate's stone foundation, 60 feet below, and for one long moment the sound is the only thing in the world. I retrieve my tablet from the slit I cut in the mattress lining 8 weeks ago. On the same Thursday I hollowed out the lamp. The device is slim, older generation, purchased with cash from a pharmacy in Bridgehampton while Arthur believed I was at a supervised salon appointment with a caregiver who no longer works here. I have kept it charged off a power bank I keep inside the frame of a framed print of the Amalfi Coast. The cable is the width of a hair tie. No one has looked. My fingers move across the glass with a speed and precision that would alarm anyone who believes the behavioral log Chloe has been maintaining. 3 password layers. My emergency offshore account in the Caymans, the one I established in 2018, the one Arthur does not know about, the one I funded incrementally over 4 years with the quiet confidence of a woman who learned, somewhere around her 27th year of marriage, that every structure needs an emergency exit. The login screen loads. It hangs. 3 seconds is a long time when you are waiting for your last intact wall to confirm it is still standing. Then the red banner materializes across the display, account frozen. Contact representative. The words are clean and sans serif and they land with the force of a physical blow. He used the forged power of attorney. He must have filed it as a conservatorship instrument, not yet legally binding without a court's involvement, but enough to trigger a financial institution's compliance protocols. Enough to lock access pending review. The Cayman institution is conservative by design. They freeze first and investigate second. It is the right policy for everyone except me, tonight, in this room. I set the tablet on the mattress and stare at the red banner for a moment longer than I need to. No money. No mobility. A locked door and a camera in the hall. Flight is a dead circuit. The architect's mind does not panic. It discards. It eliminates the non-viable pathways with the clean efficiency of a diagnostic running through a fault tree. Flight, eliminated. External contact, compromised. My phone was removed 4 months ago, my email is monitored via the home network, and the landline rings in Arthur's study before it rings anywhere else. Legal intervention, premature. I have no current evidence that would withstand the behavioral log in Dr. Renfield's forthcoming evaluation. What remains when every escape route is sealed is not hopelessness. What remains is architecture. You cannot escape a locked building. But you can rewire it from the inside until it does what you need it to do. I will not run. I will dismantle. I sit in the dark with my knees folded and my back against the headboard, my fingers moving along the platinum links of my watch in the old meditative pattern, link, clasp, reverse. It is a habit from the server room years, a way of keeping my hands occupied while my mind runs its processes. Arthur used to find it soothing to watch. He told me once that it looked like I was counting prayer beads. I had not told him that what I was actually doing was running error correction protocols on whatever problem I was currently solving. The problem I am currently solving is the problem of the house itself. Every system has a legacy. This is the first principle of security architecture, the one that predates all the others, the axiom that underlies every vulnerability assessment I ever conducted. No matter how sophisticated the current infrastructure, somewhere in the building's bones there is an older layer. A prior version. Something from before the current administrators had access, built by someone who is no longer in the room. In 1997, I was 33 years old, 8 months pregnant, and genuinely afraid of the world for the first time in my life. Not afraid for myself, I have never been particularly afraid for myself, but afraid in the new, ungovernable way that arrives with the understanding that you are responsible for a person who cannot yet protect themselves. We had just broken ground on this wing. I was on site every day, in steel-toed boots and a hard hat that did not fit over my hair, and I was wiring this house the way I wired every other system I built, with redundancies. With backup channels. With a layer beneath the primary layer that the primary layer did not know about. The nursery. It is a storage room now. Has been for 23 years. The crib is still in there, under a canvas tarp, along with boxes of things I have never been able to throw away and never been able to fully face. The wallpaper is the original, yellow roses on white, faded to near white on near ivory now, peeling at the seams. And inside the walls, running through the insulation like copper roots, is the closed-circuit monitor system I installed before the digital age made such things feel quaint. It doesn't talk to Arthur's hub. It doesn't broadcast to any server. It runs on its own loop, carrying sound through the physical medium of wire and wall and floor, the way the first telephone systems worked, not signal, but vibration. It does not appear on any network diagram. It does not appear in any system documentation, because I never filed documentation for it. It exists because I put it there, and it is invisible because I designed it to be. If the hardware still lives, I have ears in this house. I cannot go through the bedroom door. This is a constraint, not a catastrophe. Constraints are the parameters within which architecture happens. Every elegant solution I have ever designed was designed around a constraint. I go through the air. My vanity drawer yields a metal nail file, slim, stiff, a tool I have been keeping for its structural properties rather than its cosmetic ones. I cross to the balcony door. It is a standard sliding glass panel with a simple auxiliary latch, the kind of lock that exists to give the casual observer the impression of security without providing any actual mechanism thereof. I installed this latch myself in 2003, during a minor renovation, and I installed it carelessly because we were 3 floors up and I was more concerned with the grade-level entry points. The nail file fits into the track in approximately 4 seconds. The latch disengages. The sea air comes in like a physical thing, cold, immediate, carrying salt and the deep organic smell of the Atlantic at low tide. It hits my silk nightgown and passes straight through the fabric as though it isn't there. The cold is not the problem. The cold is information, temperature, wind direction, surface conditions of the limestone ledge outside. I step out. The ledge is approximately 18 inches wide, which is narrow, but not as narrow as the maintenance catwalk I once traversed in a data center in Lower Manhattan while commissioning a new security layer for a client who could not allow any downtime. I press my back against the cold limestone of the estate's exterior wall, my heels at the ledge's outer edge, and I look once at the Atlantic, black and enormous 60 feet below, the surf breaking white against the base of the cliff, and then I do not look at it again. I inch sideways toward the nursery balcony. The stone is rough against my back. My nightgown catches and pulls. The wind comes in irregular gusts that try to find purchase on the fabric, and I resist them with the deliberate, low center of gravity movement of a woman who has always understood that safety is not the absence of risk but the management of it. My heart is hammering. I am aware of it the way I am aware of the wind, as a physical fact that is neither welcome nor unwelcome. It is not fear. It is the specific, electric, full-body aliveness of being an agent of my own fate instead of an object in someone else's plan. I have not felt this in months. The nursery balcony railing finds my hand in the dark. Cold iron. I grip it and step over. The nursery smells of cedar and thyme. I close the balcony door behind me and stand still for a moment, letting my eyes adjust and my senses calibrate. There is something in the air beyond cedar, something dusty and sweet and faintly biological, the smell of organic materials slowly returning to their component parts inside a sealed room. Canvas tarps. Old wood. The particular stillness of a space no one has breathed in for a long while. I do not turn on any light. The hall camera cannot see into this room, but light beneath the door would be legible from the correct angle. I move by touch and by memory, which is a kind of touch. The far wall. The faded yellow roses. I find the corner where the wallpaper has been lifting since approximately 2008, when a water intrusion from the exterior warped the adhesive and left a permanent gap at the seam. I get my fingernails under the edge and pull. The paper comes away with a sound like quiet breathing, releasing a smell of old paste and plaster. Behind it, the wall surface is bare and slightly rough, and in its center, recessed, flush, painted over once and never again, is a small metal plate approximately the size of a paperback novel. 2 hidden screws. Phillips head. I use the nail file. The plate comes free. And there they are. The copper veins. Running in both directions from the central junction box, disappearing into the insulation on either side, carrying their closed circuit through the skeleton of this house the way the original telegraph lines ran through the earth, simple, unbreakable, and entirely beneath the notice of anyone who had not put them there themselves. The terminal connections have oxidized. The board itself is coated in a fine layer of particulate. But the architecture is intact. The architecture is always intact if you build it correctly. The floorboard gap is exactly where I left it, Third board from the east wall, loose since 2001, impossible to repair without making it obvious it had been loose, so I left it and made it mine. Inside the gap, wrapped in oily cloth with the particular care of something stored by someone who intends to return, my vintage soldering iron, a relic from my MIT days, with a cord that has been replaced twice and a tip that I have sharpened 4 times. Beside it, a spool of thin-gauge connecting wire and a pair of foam-padded headphones from approximately 1994. I unwrap the iron and plug it into the hidden outlet, installed during the original construction, absent from every renovation plan, powered off the nursery's dedicated circuit which runs independently from the main panel. The element heats in silence. The smell of hot metal and old flux rises in the dark like the ghost of 1,000 late-night sessions, graduate school and early career and the long, quiet hours of new motherhood when the house was sleeping and I was not. My hands are steady. I bridge the corroded connection on the motherboard with a bead of fresh solder, working by touch and the faint glow of the iron's tip. The copper takes the heat. The circuit closes. A tiny green light flickers on the terminal board, casting its glow across my fingers and the wall and the peeling yellow roses at the edge of the stripped paper. It is the ugliest, most beautiful color I have seen in months. I put on the headphones. The static is enormous, a roar of white noise that fills both ears completely, undifferentiated and blank. I hold very still. I remember this. This is what the system always sounds like in the first 30 seconds, loud, formless, a universe of noise before the signal resolves. You cannot rush it. You wait, and you let the system find its balance, and then, like a hand turning a dial on an old radio, like a frequency being located across the bandwidth, the noise resolves into differentiation, the low hum of the house's HVAC, the tick of the foyer clock traveling up through 3 floors of plaster and wood, the distant whisper of the Atlantic through the foundation stones. And then voices. They are in the study. Directly below me, perhaps 40 feet of plaster and lath between their words and my ears, but the copper wire carries it faithfully, vibration into signal, signal into sound, sound into language. Almost at the breaking point, Arthur. Chloe's voice. I know it in every register now, the performance voice, the private voice, the voice she uses when she thinks she is speaking to an equal. This is the private voice. Lower than the performance voice, clipped, with an efficiency to it that her carefully constructed softness usually conceals. Another week of the high-dose meds and she won't know her own name. The sound of liquid poured into glass. Arthur, pouring scotch. The particular click of his crystal decanter is as identifiable to me as a fingerprint. The evaluators come on Friday. His voice is a low, satisfied rumble with the particular resonance of a man who is experiencing the specific pleasure of watching a plan cohere. The sheriff is already convinced she's a danger to herself. We just need her to have one episode in front of him. One clearly documented episode. A pause. The sound of him setting the glass down. Then we sign the papers and she's gone. I hold completely still. Gone. Not admitted. Not evaluated. Gone. The word a contractor uses when discussing what happens to a structure they're preparing to demolish. Chloe laughs. It comes through the wire with a metallic edge, the frequency distorted by 40 feet of copper and plaster, but the tone underneath the distortion is unmistakable, giddy, acquisitive, the laughter of someone who is already counting money she believes she's about to receive. And then we leave for the villa. The static crackles, settles. The leather of Arthur's chair groans, the specific, low creak of a man shifting his weight, settling back, assuming the posture of the boardroom. I have heard that creak 10,000 times. The silence that follows it is long. Of course, darling, Arthur says. And something happens in my chest. Not quite recognition. Not quite revulsion. Something closer to a systems alert, an automated flag triggered by a specific anomaly in the input data. Because I know that tone. I have heard it deployed against clients, against competitors, against business partners who believed they were allies until the moment when the agenda required them to be otherwise. It is Arthur's liquidation voice, warm, reassuring, slightly too smooth, the voice of a man who has already decided what is going to happen and is simply managing the recipient's expectations until the mechanism is in place. But the papers need to be clean, he continues. No loose ends. Another pause. I've booked a separate consultant to handle your transition. You won't be coming to the villa, Chloe. The words arrive with the flat, matter-of-fact weight of a margin call. You'll be taking a long, quiet trip to cover our tracks. The static fills the headphones. I sit with it for a moment. He is disposing of her. The moment the POA is executed, the moment I am committed and the assets are transferred, Chloe becomes the only living witness to the methodology of everything he's done. She knows about the forged signature. She administered the medication. Her fingerprints are on every aspect of this operation, and Arthur, who has been liquidating inconvenient assets since before Chloe was born, has already arranged for someone to tie up what he considers a loose end. He is playing a game with no survivors except himself. Which means Chloe, in approximately 1 week, is going to understand what it feels like to be me. I disconnect the headphones. The silence in the nursery is immediate and complete, and I sit in it for a moment with the green light of the terminal board casting its small glow across my hands, and I run the calculation. If I leave this house, if I slip out the balcony, cross the grounds, flag down a car on Meadow Lane at midnight in my silk nightgown with a frozen bank account and no identification, I become exactly what their documentation says I am. A confused, agitated woman with documented behavioral instability, wandering away from supervised care. The first person who calls Arthur receives a concerned and saddened husband and a behavioral log and a statement from Dr. Renfield. The second person who finds me receives a mandatory mental health hold. By Thursday, I am in a facility, and by Friday, the evaluators are speaking to a man who presents as the grieving but responsible spouse managing a tragic situation. There is no version of flight in which I win. But there is a version of staying in which I don't need to fight at all. 2 predators are sharing a kill. They believe they are allies. They are not allies, they are sequential targets, and Arthur is simply operating on a longer timeline than Chloe has been led to believe. What happens when Chloe understands this? When her greed collides with her survival instinct? Predators turn on each other when the kill is threatened. Every apex predator in any ecosystem becomes territorial the moment scarcity is introduced. I don't need to fight Arthur. I don't need to fight Chloe. I need to introduce scarcity. I need to make them believe the $15 million is already spoken for, that there is a third party, unknown to both of them, who is about to walk away with everything they've been building toward. Let the greed do the work. I cross the nursery floor in the dark and retrieve Arthur's burner phone from the inner pocket of the oily cloth, where it has lived for the past 11 weeks alongside the soldering iron. The device is a prepaid flip phone, a model I have not seen sold commercially since approximately 2016, purchased, I assume, at a gas station somewhere in Suffolk County and used for the kind of communications that Arthur does not want associated with his primary devices. I found it in the side pocket of his briefcase on a morning in October when he left the briefcase on the kitchen island and went upstairs to change his shirt. He was gone for 4 minutes. It was sufficient. I have kept it charged off the same power bank as my tablet. I have not touched its contents until now. I open it. The messages on it are professional in a way that is clearly designed to appear amateur, short, coded exchanges about fund movements and account numbers that I will not need to fully decrypt tonight because tonight I am not interested in what is already there. Tonight I am interested in what isn't there yet. Isabella does not exist. By morning, she will. A woman Arthur has been promising $15 million to, through a series of messages that will look, to Chloe's eyes, like a months-long secondary scheme running parallel to everything he's been building with her. I will give Isabella an edge of intimacy, not romantic, but conspiratorial. The tone of a private arrangement between equals that has been proceeding while Chloe was occupied with management of the estate. I will make the money feel already spoken for. I will make the transfer feel imminent. I will date the messages carefully, scattering them across the past 6 weeks with the natural irregularity of an authentic thread. Then I will leave the phone where Chloe will find it. Her greed is a physical attribute. I have watched it operate for 17 weeks. It lives in the tension around her eyes, in the particular speed with which she moves when she believes there is something to acquire. She is impulsive where I am patient. She is reactive where I am structural. She will not calculate the angles when she reads those messages. She will feel the floor disappearing beneath her feet and she will reach for the nearest thing to hold on to. I will make sure the nearest thing is Arthur's throat. The sky through the nursery's balcony glass is shifting. The black of deep night has softened to a bruised, uncertain purple at the horizon, the Atlantic announcing its intentions before the sun has committed to anything. I have approximately 2 hours before the estate begins its morning routines. I wrap the burner phone back in the cloth. I recover the terminal board. I press the strip of wallpaper back into approximate position. It will not fool a close inspection, but it will not draw the eye of someone not looking for it. I replace the loose floorboard. I cross back to the balcony. The limestone ledge is colder now than it was an hour ago. I am colder now than I was an hour ago. My fingers, when I grip the railing, have lost some of their fine motor resolution, and I become aware of a raw, stinging sensation on the pads of 2 fingers on my right hand where the rough stone must have caught the skin on the first crossing. I hadn't noticed. I notice now. I inch back across the ledge with the same controlled, backward-pressing motion as before, and this time the wind is different, coming in from the northeast, pushing rather than gusting, a steady pressure against the silk nightgown that requires a corresponding lean into the stone. I give it the lean. I reach my balcony railing. I step over it. I relock the sliding door from the inside. I hide the tablet in the mattress slit. I hide the burner phone in the same location. I wind the power bank's cable back through the frame of the Amalfi print. I collapse onto the bed. The cream knitwear is still folded at the foot of the mattress, and I pull it over me with the deliberate heaviness of a woman who has been sleeping and is still sleeping, who has not been anywhere and has not done anything, who is exactly as diminished and manageable as the behavioral log says she is. The electronic deadbolt clicks open. I hear the mechanism a full second before it happens, the faint magnetic release in the frame, the micro-vibration of the bolt retracting, and I am utterly still when the door swings wide and the light from the hallway fills the room. Chloe. In her clinical blue scrubs, copper braid over one shoulder, a breakfast tray in her hands. Cold oatmeal, I can smell it from here, bland and institutional. Beside the bowl, a small paper cup. Her face is soft. Her face is always soft in the morning performance, the professional warmth deployed for the invisible audience of a house that might be recording anything. "Good morning, sweetheart," she says. "Let's get your day started." I let my jaw go slack. I let my eyes find the wall, the middle distance, the nowhere point, the specific coordinate of a gaze that is not looking at anything because there is nothing left inside that cares to look. I let her believe that the woman she put to bed last night is the same woman she is looking at now. The trap is set. 3 days pass before I move the burner phone. 3 days of cold oatmeal and paper cups, of Chloe's morning performances and Arthur's evening assessments from the doorway, of the behavioral log accumulating its careful inventory of my supposed deteriorations. 3 days of being impeccably, comprehensively vacant while the Isabella thread develops in my mind like a photograph in a darkroom, color, contrast, depth, until the image is exactly what I need it to be. I write the messages on the 4th morning, in the hour between 3 and 4 a.m., working by the dim glow of the burner phone screen with the oily cloth across my lap to block the light from the gap beneath the bedroom door. I have always written well under constraint. My best security documentation was produced in the margins of a project that was already 2 weeks over deadline, in a windowless conference room in Lower Manhattan at 2 in the morning, on graph paper because the printer had stopped working. Isabella is 44. She is Arthur's contact from a Geneva wealth management conference, the kind of woman he would actually know, actually trust, actually promise something to. She doesn't write in exclamation points. She doesn't use endearments. She writes the way people write when they believe they are being careful, which is to say with a restraint that implies everything it doesn't say. The transfer timeline you mentioned. Confirm before end of quarter. The other arrangement, the one we discussed regarding the Southampton asset, I trust that remains on schedule. I date 6 messages across the past 6 weeks. I vary the send times, 2 in the afternoon, 11 at night, 7:40 in the morning. The natural scatter of a correspondence between people who are not in the same time zone and are trying not to be obvious about the frequency of their contact. I turn the screen brightness to maximum. I charge the phone to 100%. I wait for Chloe to come to freshen the linens. She arrives at 9:15, which is her Tuesday and Thursday schedule, and she comes with the lavender spray she uses on the pillowcases, a scent I have developed a powerful aversion to over the past 4 months, though I have been careful never to register it. She sets the spray bottle on the dresser and strips the near side of the bed with brisk, practiced efficiency, and I move to the window. My ghost posture. Shoulders inward, sternum dropped, the slight forward curve of a woman whose center of gravity has relocated somewhere low and defeated. Hands loose at my sides. Eyes on the Atlantic, which today is the color of old pewter under a flat, overcast sky. The water looks cold and immovable and entirely disinterested in what is happening in the room behind me. The burner phone is on the nightstand. Half covered by a discarded silk scarf, screen up, unlocked, brightness on maximum. In the reflection of the floor-to-ceiling glass, I can see it glowing. I can also see Chloe. She moves around the foot of the bed with the bedsheet in both hands, snapping it out, that sharp, efficient crack of linen going taut, and then the rhythm stops. Just stops. The silence has a specific texture to it. The absence of the sheet snapping is louder than the sheet snapping was. I keep my eyes on the horizon. In the reflection, her hand hovering over the nightstand. The silk scarf. The glowing screen. Her hand dives. She retreats to the far corner of the room, her back to me, the copper braid falling over her shoulder as she hunches slightly forward, the posture of someone reading something they do not want to be caught reading. The blue-white light of the phone screen catches the curve of her cheek and the underside of her jaw, and I watch in the window glass as she reads. I watch her read Isabella. The jaw first. A slow, barely perceptible tightening, like something pulling a cable taut beneath the surface of the skin. Then the neck, a stiffening that travels upward from her shoulders and settles in the tendons on either side of her throat. Then the hands, the phone gripped more tightly, the knuckles losing their color. She reads it again. I know she reads it again because she doesn't move for a full 30 seconds, and Chloe is not a woman who stands still. She is a woman of perpetual small motion, the adjusting braid, the smoothing of scrub fabric, the drumming fingers. Stillness in Chloe means processing. Processing in Chloe means something has gotten through the professional performance and reached the actual animal underneath. The retirement plan. The Cayman account. The villa Arthur described in one of their late-night conversations. I caught it through the copper wire, a 2-minute description of the Amalfi Coast in summer, evaporating into the inbox of a woman in Geneva who has apparently been promised the exact same $15 million. The jaw tightens further. The caregiver is gone. The atmosphere shifts the way a room shifts before a storm, a pressure change, barely perceptible but absolute. The clinical ease drains out of the air and something else fills it, something with edges. Chloe drops the silk scarf. I hear it land. In the reflection, she is looking at me, really looking, for the first time in months, with the evaluative focus of a person recalibrating an asset. Not a patient. A source. The scarf is on the floor and the phone is in her hand and her fingers are moving against her thigh in a rapid, tapping rhythm that I have not seen from her before. It is the physical signature of someone running a calculation they don't like the results of. She knows what she is. She has always known what she is. She simply believed that Arthur's awareness of her value would protect her longer than it actually will. Isabella has introduced a variable she hadn't accounted for: competition. And Chloe, who is fundamentally a creature of acquisition, responds to competition the way all acquisitive creatures do, with a desperation that bypasses every other cognitive process and runs straight to the primitive core. She needs the keys. She needs them now, before Isabella gets there. She needs me. I can feel the moment she decides to use me before she moves toward me. There is a quality of intention that precedes physical action, a micro-shift in the air between two people when one of them has made a decision, and I have been reading those micro-shifts since before Chloe was born. Now. I spin around. The gasp comes from a real place. I have been holding myself at such a sustained tension for 4 days that the release of it, deployed as a performance, feels almost genuine. My eyes go wide. My hands find her wrists. I lunge forward with the stumbling urgency of a woman whose body has decided to move before her mind gave the instruction, and I grip her wrists with trembling hands, not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to communicate fear, the specific grip of someone who needs to hold on to another person because the floor is moving. She's coming, Chloe. My voice is a hiss, a panicked rasp stripped of every social layer. I let it shake. Isabella is coming for the mahogany box. Arthur told her the codes. He's going to let her take it all. He's already promised her everything. I look directly into the green eyes. I let a single tear track down my right cheek. Not a performance tear. I have learned to produce them through a specific tension in the muscles around the orbital bone, a technique I developed in the 3rd week when I needed to be able to cry on demand for the behavioral log cameras. We have to hide it, Chloe. Please. Please help me hide it before she gets here. Chloe's hands, trapped in my grip, have gone still. She is staring at me. The predatory hunger is right at the surface of her face now, not hidden, not professional, just present, a naked want that her features are not architecturally equipped to conceal. She doesn't question the clarity. Of course she doesn't. A woman who has been dosing me for 17 weeks and watching my supposed cognitive function deteriorate into nothing does not stop to wonder at its sudden return because in this moment, she doesn't need me to be reliable. She needs me to be useful. And I am being maximally useful. Where? She breathes. I lead her down. My gait is a controlled chaos, hurrying but stumbling, urgent but directionless, the movement of a woman whose alarm system is firing but whose navigation is compromised. I grip the banister of the grand staircase with both hands, taking each step with the concentrated effort of someone who is not sure her legs will hold. The shadows in the stairwell are long and angled, mid-morning in November, the Southampton sun coming in low and gray through the eastern windows and projecting the mullioned bars of the window frames across the hardwood floors in patterns that look, I have always thought, like the structural diagrams of something being built. Or dismantled. Chloe is a half-step behind me and slightly to my left, close enough to catch me if I fall, her hand hovering near my elbow with the specific hover of a person who wants to be able to claim they were helping. The house is quiet around us. Arthur is in the city today, returning this afternoon, which is why I chose today. The house staff comes on Wednesdays. It is Thursday. We are alone. I pull her toward the library. The library smells of Arthur. That is the only accurate description. Old leather and tobacco and the faint chemical residue of the expensive scotch he decants directly onto the mahogany shelves to let the fumes permeate the wood, a habit he acquired somewhere in his 40s and that I find, objectively, grotesque. The shelves rise to the ceiling on 3 walls, floor-to-ceiling first editions and financial texts and the leather-bound collected works of authors Arthur has never read but whose spines communicate a particular kind of authoritative taste to clients who visit. I know every book in this room. I know which ones have been moved since last year and which ones haven't been touched since the Clinton administration. I stumble toward the painting of the harbor. It's a 19th century oil, ostensibly Southampton Harbor in winter, which Arthur purchased at auction in 2007 for a sum that would have made my graduate advisor weep. He purchased it because the provenance was impressive and the frame is heavy and the scale communicates seriousness. He has never, to my knowledge, actually looked at it. I swing it aside on its hinges. The wall safe sits in the recess behind it, gunmetal gray, recessed flush, combination dial with an electronic override panel. A Hardwick Series 4, 2014 model, which I know because I was the one who sourced it. My hands shake so violently I miss the first digit. I fumble. I press my fist against my mouth and make a sound that could be a sob or a cough. I can't, the numbers, I can't hold them. Chloe steps in front of me. Tell me the code, she says. Clipped. Quiet. Entirely focused. I whisper, 5, 2, 8, 0. The hydraulic bolts retract with a sound like a held breath being released. The door swings open, and the safe's internal light comes on, and Chloe's face, illuminated from below, is stripped of everything except the specific bliss of a person seeing exactly what they were hoping to find. The interior is velvet-lined and orderly. Arthur is meticulous about his physical archives. It is one of the few organizational habits he has maintained with genuine discipline throughout our marriage, because physical evidence has always been the thing he fears most. Along the left wall, 3 slim black USB devices, each no larger than a stick of lip balm, each labeled in Arthur's precise abbreviation system with characters that mean nothing to anyone who doesn't know the filing logic. I know the filing logic. They are the hardware encryption tokens for his offshore accounts. Each one holds a segment of the authentication key required to access a different layered account structure in the Cayman network. Without all 3, no single transfer is possible. With all 3 and the account numbers, which are also in this safe, on a folded paper in Arthur's handwriting, you could move $15 million in the time it takes to make coffee. I pull them out and thrust them at Chloe as though they are burning. Take them, hide them from her, she can't have them. Chloe's fingers close around the 3 tokens with a force and deliberateness that has nothing performing in it whatsoever. It is the purest gesture I have observed from her in 17 weeks, unmediated, unperformed want. She looks at them in her palm. She looks at me. And in her eyes, for just a moment before the professional softness slides back over the surface, I see the terrifying clarity of a person who has just stopped pretending to be something she isn't. The laptop, I say. I point to Arthur's desk. He showed me once, you plug them in and hit the transfer. The account numbers are in the safe on the folded paper. Put it somewhere safe. Put it in your name. I grip her arm, reversing our positions from the hallway on the first night, and I let the hysteria climb in my voice like a register. If Isabella logs in first, it's gone. Chloe, please, do it now, before she gets here. She is already moving. Arthur's laptop opens to his desktop. She knows his password, of course she does. She has had months to observe it, and the tokens go in one by one. I stand slightly behind her and to her right, in the posture of a woman too frightened to look directly at the screen, and I watch Chloe work. She works quickly. She is not technically sophisticated in the way I am technically sophisticated, but she has a practical fluency with financial interfaces, the kind of knowledge you acquire by paying close attention to the people who have money when they think you're not paying attention. She navigates to the transfer interface with the ease of someone who has rehearsed this in their mind many times. She enters the account numbers from the folded paper. She enters the receiving account, her own, presumably, one of the offshore structures she has been building with Arthur's knowledge or without it, it doesn't matter now. The progress bar appears. Transferring, $15,402,000. The numbers crawl across the screen in increments, each percentage point rendered in the clean sans serif font of financial software. I watch the bar. I watch Chloe's reflection in the black screen of the first edition Dickens behind the desk, her copper braids swinging as she leans forward, her breathing shallow with the effort of containing her excitement. I watched the bar. I had flagged those accounts 2 weeks ago. Not loudly, not in a way that would trigger an immediate freeze, which would have been premature. A quiet flag to the fraud monitoring desk at the Cayman institution, submitted through the secure portal I accessed on my hidden tablet, using the account credentials that Arthur believes he has revoked but that I had mirrored to a secondary login before he filed the conservatorship paperwork. The flag reads, "Anticipated unauthorized access. Preserve transaction logs. Notify law enforcement upon transfer initiation. Every cent Chloe moves is being written into a federal record. Every keystroke is a brick in the wall of her own prosecution." I watch the bar complete. The movement catches the corner of my eye before it fully registers, a darkening in the glass front of the bookshelf to my left, a shadow with the specific mass and stillness of a human figure. I look without turning my head, using the reflection of the first edition spines the way I use every other reflective surface in this house, as information, passively received. Arthur. He is standing in the doorway. He has been standing in the doorway for some time, I think, long enough for the laptop screen's glow to have told him everything he needs to know. He is not moving. He is not making a sound. He is simply standing there in his bespoke navy suit, the gold cufflinks catching the low light, and his face is doing something I have never seen it do before, not performing. Not manufacturing. Not managing the presentation of itself for a particular audience. The mask is off. What's underneath it is cold and precise and very, very still, the way certain things are still when they are deciding whether to strike. He is looking at the screen. He is looking at Chloe. And then, slowly, with the deliberateness of a man who has just finished a very specific calculation, he is looking at me. Not at the ghost. Not at the vacant woman in the cream knitwear who stares at the Atlantic and stumbles on staircases. He is looking at me the way you look at someone when you have just understood, for the first time, what they actually are. The gold cufflinks catch the light as his hand reaches slowly behind him. The mahogany doors close with a sound that travels through my sternum, a heavy, hydraulic thud of solid wood meeting solid frame, the kind of sound that has no ambiguity in it. The lock engages. I hear the bolt slide home with a click that is, by any acoustic measure, a small sound, and yet it carries the weight of a sealed room, a completed enclosure, a trap that has just determined which side of it you're on. Arthur steps into the light. He is not looking at Chloe. He looked at Chloe for the 1 second he needed to assess her, the laptop, the tokens, the progress bar, and he has filed her away in the appropriate category. His eyes are on me. Only on me. And they have the specific quality of attention of a man who has been operating under a significant misapprehension and has just, in the last 30 seconds, corrected it. "You've been very busy, Elodie." His voice is quiet. Not the boardroom rumble, not the Scotch-lubricated authority of a man performing mastery for an audience. This is the voice underneath all of that, the one I heard for the first time about 15 years into our marriage, on the phone, when he thought I was asleep. It has no warmth in it. It has no performance in it. It is simply the sound of a mind that has made a decision and is now stating the terms. He takes a step closer. The burner phone. The tokens. He glances at the open safe, at the swung-aside harbor painting, at Chloe, who has pressed herself against the desk and gone the color of unbleached linen. "You found my monitor system in the nursery." He says it without question. A statement of inventory. Another step. The barrel chest and the thinning hair and the close-set eyes that I once thought communicated intelligence and now understand communicate only the specific intelligence of a man who has never had to account for anyone other than himself. But you forgot one thing. He is close enough now that I can smell the scotch from his lunch, the mahogany wax, the expensive fabric softener his dry cleaner uses. The familiar smell of 30 years of proximity to a man I believed, for a portion of those years, that I loved. "I don't need a power of attorney," he says, "if you're dead before the sun comes up." The room holds it. Chloe makes a sound, not quite a word, something involuntary, the sound a small animal makes when it hears the sound of something larger moving. She is processing, behind me, the information that the man who told her she was his partner has just stated, in a sealed room, his contingency plan. The plan that eliminates the need for a forged document. The plan that eliminates the only witness. Both of them. I stand between them, between a thief who has just made herself a felon and a murderer who has just announced his timeline, and the architect's mind, which does not do panic, which has never done panic, runs its diagnostics. The system is sealed. The sirens are miles away. The logic holds. Arthur's hand lands on my shoulder. The weight of it is exactly what I expected, heavy, proprietary, the grip of a man who has spent 30 years touching things he considers his. His fingers tighten in a slow, controlled pulse, and I can feel the specific tension in them, the effort of restraint from a man who would prefer a different kind of resolution to this evening but is still, at this particular moment, performing the possibility of reason. I do not flinch. I reach into the deep pocket of my cream cardigan, the pocket that Chloe has checked twice in the past 3 weeks, finding only a handkerchief and a packet of sugar-free mints, and I produce the tablet. The screen is already active. 4 panels arranged in a grid, each pulling from a different angle of the nursery monitor system, the library's north wall with the open safe and the harbor painting swung aside, the east corner where Arthur's desk sits with the laptop open and the progress bar frozen on its completed transfer, a wide-angle view of all 3 of us in the amber light, and a 4th panel displaying a green uplink indicator and a remote server address that I will not read aloud. Careful, Arthur. My voice is not the ghost voice. It is not the whisper I have been deploying for 4 months, the soft, slightly confused murmur of a woman losing her language. It is my actual voice, the one I used in boardrooms and server rooms and at 17 years' worth of security briefings, the one that carries without effort and has a quality of precision in it that has always made people in meetings stop talking and start listening. You're being recorded on a closed-circuit loop you didn't even know existed. Every word you've said tonight is already on a remote server. The fingers on my shoulder go very still. I stand up straight. It is a physical act with the properties of a statement. I let the slumped curvature of the past 4 months go, the rounded shoulders, the dropped sternum, the deliberate shrinkage that signals deference and diminishment, and I straighten until my spine is what it actually is, a rigid, load-bearing column belonging to a woman who is 5 feet 7 inches tall and has been carrying this particular weight for long enough. I adjust my silk blouse. I smooth it with 2 fingers at the hem, the gesture unhurried. I meet Arthur's eyes. His face is running several processes simultaneously. I can see them operating in real time, shock, which he is suppressing, calculation, which he is deploying, and underneath both, something older and more fundamental, which is the specific cognitive disorientation of a man who has built an entire operational plan on a foundational assumption that has just been revealed as false. He is not looking at his fading wife. He never was. He is looking at me. At what I actually am. And his mind is running the implications of how long I have actually been this, while he was proceeding under the assumption that I was something else entirely. The fog was a design choice, Arthur. I keep my voice level, the way you keep a blade level when you want the cut to be clean rather than ragged. A necessary camouflage while I map the extent of your rot. I watch him absorb the technical precision of the word. Mapped. Not discovered, not the accidental stumbling of a confused woman upon something she didn't understand. Mapped. Systematic. Deliberate. Over time. The administrator of this system has reviewed the permissions. The administrator is revoking access. Behind him, Chloe has not moved from her position against the desk. She is holding the edge of the desk with both hands, her knuckles white against the mahogany, and the copper braid has come partially undone on one side, a loose wave of hair falling across her cheek in a way that makes her look, suddenly and improbably, very young. The tokens are in her pocket. The laptop is behind her. She is looking at the tablet's 4-panel display with the expression of a person who has just understood the full dimensions of a room they thought was smaller. Headlights sweep across the shelves. The mahogany absorbs most of it. Those walls have been drinking ambient light since the Gilded Age and they are good at it, but the strobe gets through. Blue and red in alternating pulse, pressing through the library's tall windows in the distinctive rhythm of law enforcement. The crunch of gravel under tires, 2 vehicles, the second one heavier than the first. Arthur's face performs a rapid sequence of recalibrations. The shock recedes. The opportunism surfaces. I watch him decide, in approximately 2 seconds, that there is still a move available, that the variable he is looking at is not a defeat but a renegotiation. He straightens his tie with a single, sharp tug. That's the sheriff. He says it with the particular tone of a man revealing the ace he's been holding, the one that makes everything prior to it irrelevant. I called him. He's here to take you to the psych ward, Elodie. His chin lifts. The barrel chest expands. He is reassembling the grieving husband with the speed of a man who has been rehearsing it. Who do you think he's going to believe? A respected banker? Or a woman who's been losing her mind for 6 months? He believes this is still a credibility contest. He believes the playing field is still the one he designed. He'll believe the data. My thumb moves to the tablet's send icon, a gesture I make unhurriedly, the way you make a gesture when its outcome is not in question. 10 minutes ago, I sent an automated suspicious activity alert to the bank's fraud department, flagged with my personal biometric key. A key, Arthur, that you thought you'd revoked when you filed the conservatorship paperwork. You revoked the Surface credential. You didn't know about the mirrored secondary login I created in March. I turn the tablet slightly so that he can see the confirmation receipt on the screen, a green banner, a timestamp, an authorization code. The $15 million Chloe just transferred? It's been tagged as felony embezzlement in progress. I turn to Chloe. The wire didn't go where you think it went. 3 days ago, I set up a honeypot, a mirror account with an identical routing structure that catches transfers and holds them inside the bank's jurisdiction pending fraud review. The money never left. I watch her face. It's sitting in a federal hold right now, with your account credentials stamped on the transfer order and a complete keystroke log of everything you did on that laptop in the last 11 minutes. The sound Chloe makes is not quite a gasp and not quite a word. It is the sound of a specific kind of terror, not the terror of danger, but the terror of someone who has been moving at full speed toward what they believed was solid ground and has just registered that there is no ground there at all. The burner phone in your pocket, I continue, and I let my eyes hold Chloe's for a moment before I complete the sentence, because I want her to feel the full geometry of it before she understands the last wall. It's registered to Arthur's offshore shell company in the Cayman network. It contains a complete thread of fabricated messages from a woman named Isabella, documenting a conspiracy to defraud and dispose of a legal spouse, me, in order to transfer assets under a forged power of attorney. I pause. I forwarded the entire thread to Sheriff Miller's department email 40 minutes ago, along with the metadata and the registration documents for the device. I let them both sit with it. The library is very quiet. The clocks in this house are expensive and well-maintained, and they tick with the measured precision of things designed to outlast the people who bought them. Arthur is looking at me with an expression I have seen once before, 22 years ago, in a mediation room in Midtown, when a counterparty he had spent 6 months certain he was outmaneuvering produced a document he had not known existed. It lasted approximately 4 seconds before the performance resumed. This time, I think it will last longer. Chloe is looking at the pocket that contains the burner phone as though it has become a living thing. I haven't simply defended myself. I have made them into evidence against each other, and now the only question that remains in this room is which one of them will understand that first and move towards self-preservation fastest. 2 predators. 1 life jacket. I have introduced the scarcity. The doorbell chimes through the whole house, a heavy, resonant tone that the previous owners installed to be heard from the east wing to the beach terrace, a sound with real weight in it. Arthur moves. He is fast for a man of his build. That has always been true, the surprising quickness of a stocky body that has spent 64 years being underestimated because of its shape. He crosses the library in 4 strides, wrenches the mahogany doors open with both hands, and his voice, when it comes, is the most complete performance I have ever heard from him, cracked with worry, roughened with a manufactured exhaustion, carrying all the weight of a man who has been suffering quietly for too long. Sheriff Miller. Thank God you're here. He reaches the foyer, his hand going out to grip the sheriff's arm in the particular grip of a man requesting support. She's had a violent break. She's been stealing documents, she's completely delusional, I've been trying to protect her, but tonight I think she's a genuine danger to herself, I'm afraid we've waited too long. The performance is excellent. I want to acknowledge that, at least to myself. After 30 years of watching it deployed, I can appreciate the craft of it. The voice crack on danger to herself. The way he doesn't immediately accuse but rather expresses concern, letting the accusation arrive as a reluctant conclusion rather than an agenda. The grip on Miller's arm, communicating the physical reality of a man who is holding on because he needs to. It is the performance of a lifetime. I let him finish. I tap a command on the tablet. The library's smart locks, the ones Arthur installed as part of his renovation of this room 2 years ago, the ones I subsequently accessed through the home network's administrative backend and quietly added my own permissions to, click open with a sound like a sentence being completed. The overhead lights respond to a second command, rising from their amber evening setting to the full clinical brightness of a room with nothing to hide. In here, Sheriff. My voice carries into the foyer with zero effort. It is not raised. It does not need to be. It has the quality of a system issuing an instruction to a component that has been waiting for it. Sheriff Miller enters the library. He is a large man in his late 50s, with the particular deliberateness of someone who has been in law enforcement long enough to have learned that the room is usually more complicated than whoever called him suggested. He looks at the laptop. He looks at Chloe, who is still at the desk. He looks at the open safe. He looks at me, standing in the center of the room with a tablet in my hands and a posture that communicates, without any particular effort, that I am the only person in this space who is not surprised by anything that is happening. 2 paramedics are behind him. I register them and set them aside. They are Arthur's prop, his backup evidence of a medical emergency, and they will not be needed for their intended purpose tonight. You're just in time to witness a grand larceny, I say. I point to the laptop. The screen is frozen on a completed wire transfer of $15.4 million from my husband's private offshore accounts. Initiated 11 minutes ago by Miss Chloe Reed, using hardware encryption tokens from that safe, under the instruction, I pause for one beat, that she believed she was acting on my behalf. The transfer logs, the keystroke record, and the biometric authentication data are all currently in federal hold. I've also sent your department a complete file on the forged power of attorney in the manila folder on the study desk. You'll want to retrieve that before anything else moves. Miller looks at the laptop screen. He looks at Chloe. He looks at Arthur, who is standing in the doorway with his hands still on the frame and his face running out of moves. Chloe breaks. It happens the way structural failures happen in my experience, not gradually, not with warning, but with the sudden completeness of a load-bearing element that has been stressed past its tolerance limit. One moment she is pressed against the desk in a rigid, white-knuckled containment. The next moment she is not contained at all. He made me do it. She points at Arthur. Her arm is shaking, but her finger is steady, the particular steadiness of someone who has found a direction to point and is going to point it for everything they are worth. All of it. He's been drugging her for months. I have the prescription records. He had me administering compounds that aren't approved. He said it was her regular medication. I didn't know. She does know. She has always known. But self-preservation is not a process that concerns itself with prior knowledge. He forged the power of attorney. It's in the manila folder on the study desk. He had a lawyer at Hastings and Stern prepare it. I saw the drafts. He was going to commit her and take the trust, and then he was going to. Her voice breaks. Recovers. He told me I wasn't coming to the villa. He'd arranged for someone. A consultant, he called it. To handle my transition. She spits the last word. Arthur says nothing. He is standing in the doorway and he is doing something I have never seen him do. He is not performing. He is simply standing there, and his face, without a performance running on it, is a face I don't recognize. It is a much smaller face than the one I've lived with. He was going to have me killed, Chloe says, and the words come out with a flat simplicity that has no theater in it whatsoever. And her, once the commitment papers were signed and the assets transferred, she was never going to come back from wherever he was sending her. Miller has stopped looking around the room. He is looking at Arthur. I reach into the pocket of my cardigan. The original trust agreement is a single folded document on archival weight paper, notarized in 2003 by a firm that no longer exists under that name but whose records are fully intact at the county clerk's office in Manhattan. I have been keeping it in the nursery floorboard gap for the past 8 weeks, alongside the soldering iron, ever since I found the copy Arthur believed was the only copy missing from the estate's filing system. He thought he destroyed it. He destroyed a reproduction I'd left in its place. I hand it to Sheriff Miller. The signatures on Arthur's version of the power of attorney don't match the notarized originals, I say. The notary stamp on the forgery was manufactured. The registration number belongs to a notary who retired in 2019. Your forensics department will confirm it in under an hour. I hold the sheriff's gaze. He is looking at me with an expression that is recalibrating in real time, the expression of a man who arrived expecting to manage a confused elderly woman and is instead receiving a complete evidentiary package from a person who clearly has not been confused about anything. I'd also suggest pulling the prescription records from the compounding pharmacy that filled the medication Chloe has been administering. The prescribing physician isn't licensed to practice in New York State. Miller takes the document. He looks at it for a moment. He looks at Arthur. Then he looks at the open safe, the laptop, the tokens on the desk, the patrol car lights still pulsing blue and red through the library windows, and the particular quality of the room, its completeness, the way every element in it is pointing in the same direction, and the professional concern on his face completes its transition to the grim, certain expression of a man who understands that he has been used as a prop in someone else's theater and is now going to finish the scene his own way. Arthur Vance. Miller's voice has the specific flatness of authority that has made a decision. He steps forward. Chloe Reed. Hands behind your backs. The handcuffs come out. The sound they make, that double click of the ratchet mechanism, clean and metallic and utterly final, is a small sound by any objective measure. In the library of the Southampton estate, with its 30-foot ceilings and its first edition shelves and its harbor painting swung aside to reveal an open vault, it carries like a bell. Arthur says nothing. His face has gone the color and texture of something that has been suppressed for a very long time and has now been released, a purplish, mottled stillness that is not quite rage and not quite shame and not quite the recognition of consequence, but some compound of all three for which I am not sure there is a name. He allows his hands to be moved behind his back with the stiff, mechanical compliance of a man whose body is cooperating because his mind has not yet finished arriving at what has happened. Chloe is crying. The sound is high and sustained, a thin wail that has something genuine in it, not the performed softness of the caregiver persona, but the genuine distress of someone who is, for the first time in this experience, without a strategy. She is led past me toward the door, and I watch her go with a feeling I will not call satisfaction, exactly, because satisfaction implies simplicity, and what I feel is more architectural than that. More structural. The feeling of a system that has been correctly diagnosed, correctly intervened upon, and correctly restored to stable operation. They are taken out through the front doors into the cold Atlantic night. The patrol cars receive them. The doors close. The sirens start. Travel up the long driveway to the road. Diminish. Go silent. I walk out onto the porch. The sea breeze arrives immediately, cold, decisive, smelling of salt and deep water and the particular mineral cleanness of November on the North Shore. It moves through my hair, the chestnut still shot through with the gray I have been strategically managing for months as part of the frailty performance, and I let it move. I let all of it move, the hair, the silk blouse, the cream cardigan, the posture. Nothing is performing anything right now. There is no audience and no purpose and no system to run. The red taillights of the patrol cars make the curve at the bottom of the long driveway and disappear behind the hedgerow. The gravel settles. The sound of the cars fades through the trees toward Meadow Lane and then toward the county road and then toward wherever the law takes things that need to be processed and cataloged and held to account. I stand on the porch until the last sound is gone. The Atlantic is there in the dark, doing what it has always done, breathing in and out, massive and indifferent, carrying its cold cargo back and forth across the continental shelf. I have stared at it for 4 months from the Eames chair, in the performance of a woman with nothing left inside to look at the world with. I stare at it now from the porch of the estate that I helped design and fund and fill, with everything inside me present and accounted for, and it looks different than it looked through the glass. More real. More three-dimensional. More like something that belongs to the same world I belong to. My spine is straight. My shoulders are level. I am 5 feet 7 inches tall and I have been, for some significant portion of the past 30 years, making myself smaller in this house, in this marriage, in this life constructed around a man who was liquidating me the whole time. The architect has reclaimed the blueprint. The drawing room receives me with its familiar amber warmth, the lamps on their lowest setting, the fire in the grate that Chloe lit this morning as part of her domestic performance and that has burned down to deep coals. The 1996 Chateau Margaux is in the wine cabinet where it has been for 6 years, waiting for what I always privately called the right occasion, which I never defined more specifically than when the time comes. The time has come. I open the bottle with the corkscrew I retrieve from the sideboard drawer, and I do it properly, not the performed fumbling of the recent past, but with the clean, practiced motion of a woman who knows how to open a good bottle of wine and sees no reason to pretend otherwise. The cork comes out with a sound that is wholly unremarkable and wholly perfect. I pour a glass and hold it for a moment in the firelight. Deep garnet, almost black at the center, with a rim of something close to amber at the edge, 30 years old and still in full possession of itself, still complex, still everything it was built to be. I drink. The taste is what it has always been in my imagination during the years I was saving it, layered and slow, with a dark fruit warmth that arrives first and a mineral depth that arrives after and a long, dry finish that does not hurry. It tastes like time. It tastes like the specific flavor of a patience that has finally been permitted to conclude. I set the glass on the mahogany table. I reach up and find the clasp of the pearl necklace. The pearls are heavy, they have always been heavy, a multi-strand piece that Arthur selected for our 20th anniversary with the specific eye of a man choosing a piece of jewelry for its signal value rather than its beauty. Mrs. Arthur Vance. That is what this necklace communicates, in the language of Southampton dinner parties and charity galas and the social architecture of old money on the North Shore. It communicates ownership. It communicates status. It communicates the particular species of woman who is defined entirely by her adjacency to a particular species of man. The clasp releases. The necklace comes away from my throat and I hold it for a moment, feeling its weight, substantial, real, the accumulated heft of all the occasions on which I wore it and what those occasions cost, and then I lay it on the mahogany table. Not dropped. Not thrown. Laid down, deliberately, with the attention you give to the careful placement of something you are choosing to put down rather than being compelled to carry. It lies there on the dark wood. A discarded coil. A leash at the end of its function. I carry my wine to the window. The sun is beginning. It starts the way it always starts here, not with a dramatic arrival but with a slow suffusion of the eastern sky, the black giving way to a deep, reluctant blue, the blue shading toward a bruised pink at the horizon, the pink beginning, very gradually, to warm. The Atlantic catches it first. The surface of the water, which an hour ago was invisible, begins to resolve into texture, into the dark chop of November swells, into the white lines of the breaking surf far below the estate's cliff face. It is quiet. Not the quiet of a house holding its breath, which is the quality of quiet I have been living inside for 4 months. Not the performed silence of a woman who has extinguished herself to avoid triggering a surveillance log. This is the quiet of a space that has returned to its own nature, a large house in early morning, with the fire down to coals and the sea doing its work below and no one left in it except the person who built it. I have built many things in my life. Security systems, mostly, but also the social architecture of a marriage and a household and a position in a world that requires careful maintenance to inhabit. I built some of those things well and some of them I built for the wrong reasons, and the ones I built for the wrong reasons are the ones that required the most maintenance and eventually failed in the specific ways that things fail when their foundation was never quite right. This house, I built correctly. The bones of it are good. The hidden copper wire in the nursery walls is good. The dead zone that no one else knew about is good. The archive of evidence in the nursery floorboards is good. The mirrored login credential and the honey pot account and the remote server uplink and the quiet flag to the fraud department are good. Everything I built for my own survival, I built well. The sun is bleeding fully over the horizon now, the light coming in gold and low through the drawing room windows, falling across the mahogany table, across the pearl necklace lying there in its coil, across the half-full glass of 1996 Margot. Across my hands, which are holding nothing. Across the room, which is mine. The silence does not feel like a vacuum. It feels like an empire. And I am its only sovereign. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?